Welcome back to the Growth Snack. Today we're embarking on a deep dive into a book that's really described as life-changing by millions. Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, a guide to spiritual enlightenment. We've got some key excerpts from this really transformative work, and our mission, like always here on the Growth Snack, is to, cut through to the essential nuggets of wisdom, give you the core insights, kind of quickly and clearly so you feel really all-informed.
And I think it's really important to understand where this book even came from. This isn't just like abstract philosophy. It actually sprang from a profoundly personal, really powerful awakening experience Tolle had. This was after a long period of intense unhappiness. The book recounts how the catalyst was this thought that just wouldn't leave him. I cannot live with myself any longer.
Wow. That thought alone, just sitting with that feels incredibly heavy. I cannot live with myself.
Absolutely. And the book describes how this thought led to this sudden, almost strange realization. If I cannot live with myself, well, doesn't that imply there must be two of him? You know, the I and the self that the I finds it impossible to live with.
Ah, okay.
He says this insight was just so powerful, so unexpected, that it basically stopped his mind completely. He was suddenly like fully conscious, but without a single thought.
Wow. A complete stopping of thinking. Yeah. What did that actually lead to?
Well, according to the book, it led to this experience of just immense peace and joy. He describes feeling drawn into a vortex, and initially, he was gripped by fear, but then heard this inner voice say, resist nothing.
Yeah.
He felt like he fell into this kind of void inside himself. And when he awoke, everything looked brand new, just vibrant, filled with a love and an aliveness he'd never perceived before. He realized his true nature wasn't that miserable self he couldn't live with, but the ever-present consciousness before any thoughts or identification.
So this wasn't just like an intellectual thing. It was a direct, lived experience that totally shifted his perception.
Yeah.
And that's what people saw in him later on.
Exactly. People noticed this radical shift. They'd come up to him and say, whatever you have, I want it. Can you give it to me or show me how? And his simple answer, the book explains, was basically, you already have it. You just can't feel it because your mind is making too much noise. And that interaction, that simple point, is really what eventually blossomed into this book.
That's an amazing origin story for such a, foundational text in modern spirituality. So let's get to the heart of it then. If you had to sort of boil down the power of now to its absolute core premise, what would you say it is?
At its heart, the book really makes the case that true peace, freedom, fulfillment, they aren't found by rearranging our external lives or, chasing future goals. They're only accessible right here in the present moment in the now. And a huge part of the book is dismantling how our minds, particularly what Tolle calls the ego, relentlessly drag us away from this present moment, trapping us in the past and future and creating, virtually all our suffering.
Okay, that sounds like a really crucial place to start. If our minds are the problem, the first big idea must be this concept of not being who we think we are. Or maybe not being our thoughts.
Precisely. That's one of Tolle's foundational arguments. We are just profoundly identified with our thinking mind. We live as our thoughts. We believe the voice in our head, that endless internal chatter, is who we are.
And the book suggests this isn't just like inefficient thinking, it's actually problematic.
Oh, very much so. Tolle uses this analogy of the mind as a tool, right? Like a hammer. You pick it up for a specific task, use it effectively, then you put it down. But for most people, he argues, the mind is constantly on. And maybe 80 to 90% of its activity isn't just repetitive or useless, it's actively negative and harmful. We've basically lost the off button for the incessant mental chatter.
Right, the off switch is gone.
Yeah.
And this constant, often negative identification with our thoughts, that's where this idea of the ego comes in.
Exactly. This identification with the mind, the story the mind tells about me, creates what the book calls the ego. It's presented not as arrogance in the usual sense, but as a false, mind-made sense of self, like a phantom identity.
Okay.
And because it's not real, the ego feels incredibly vulnerable, inherently insecure. It sees itself as constantly under threat, even if it puts on a confident front. The book notes the ego's needs are just endless. It desperately needs to identify with external things, possessions, status, reputation, relationships, even knowledge, just to prop up this fragile, illusory sense of self.
Okay, so if the ego's default state is feeling threatened because it's based on something so, unstable, how does that show up emotionally?
Tolle suggests that emotion is basically the body's reaction to the mind. So if the mind, driven by the ego, is continually broadcasting this message of, I am under threat, The corresponding emotion in the body is, almost inevitably, fear. The book suggests that anyone primarily identified with their mind, disconnected from their deeper, true power rooted in being, will have fear as this constant undercurrent in their life. It can range from just subtle unease all the way up to acute anxiety and dread.
That connection really makes a lot of sense. This deep identification with the mind and the fear it generates. It seems intrinsically linked to suffering, doesn't it? Let's explore that a bit more. The book talks about the roots of suffering stemming from pain and something called psychological time.
Yes, that's a key link. The book explains that any pain you experience right now in the present moment is fundamentally a form of non-acceptance or, unconscious resistance to what is. On the level of thought, this resistance often shows up as judgment or complaint. On the emotional level, it's some form of negativity. The clearer you become, the more you see that the more identified you are with your thinking mind, the more you're going to suffer. Because the mind's nature is often to deny or resist the reality of the now.
Okay, so that's the pain generated in the present by resisting the present. But what about all the pain we carry from the past? The old hurts, unresolved stuff, lingering resentments.
Ah, right. That's where the concept of the pain body comes in. Tolle introduces this as an accumulation of past emotional pain that wasn't fully faced, accepted, and processed when it happened.
Right.
He describes it almost like a semi-autonomous energy field within us, and it has one primary goal: survival.
Yeah, it's food.
Its food source, pain. When the pain body is dormant, life feels okay. But when it awakens, it seeks more of what it knows. It can literally take you over, becoming the voice in your head.
Yeah.
And even subconsciously set up situations in your life to generate more of its preferred food: drama, anger, conflict, even physical illness sometimes.
Pain feeds on pain.
Yeah.
That's a really vivid and, slightly chilling image.
It is. But the book offers a crucial counterpoint. The pain body cannot feed on joy. It finds joy completely indigestible.
Oh.
And that fact points directly towards the way out of its grip.
Okay, so how does the book suggest we handle this pain body when it activates and tries to take over? What do we do?
Well, the core teaching is you absolutely cannot fight the pain body. Trying to do that just creates more conflict and it feeds it.
Right, more struggle.
Tolle says unconsciousness created it, but consciousness transmutes it. The key is watching it, bringing the light of your conscious attention to the feeling itself, without judgment, without adding a thought story to it, without becoming a victim.
Just observing.
Just observing. Watching it implies accepting its presence in that moment. When you bring the light of consciousness, your presence, to the pain, you withdraw the energy it needs to survive, and it begins to dissolve.
And how does this idea of psychological time fit into all this pain and suffering?
They're deeply intertwined. Tolle argues that pretty much all negativity and suffering arise from accumulating psychological time and a fundamental denial of the present moment. If your mind is constantly dwelling in the future, it generates fear, anxiety, tension, worry. If it's fixated on the past, you experience guilt, regret, resentment, sadness, bitterness, all forms of non-forgiveness, really, towards yourself or others.
There's that really powerful passage in the book, isn't there? The one that distinguishes between your life situation and your actual life. That really clarifies the time thing.
Yes, exactly. It asks you to pause and forget about your life situation for a while and pay attention to your life. He makes the point that your life situation, your job, finances, relationships, health challenges, all that exists in time. It's a mind-constructed narrative about past and future.
But your actual life, your true reality, is happening only now. Every problem, the book asserts, is ultimately an illusion of the mind that exists only in psychological time. He calls the present moment the narrow gate that leads to life, and challenges you directly. Do you have a problem now? Not tomorrow, not in 5 minutes, but right this very instant.
That really forces a shift in perspective, doesn't it? Moving from the huge landscape of our perceived life story to the reality of just this single point, the present moment. Which brings us right to the core teaching of the book, the path to liberation, access through the power of now.
Exactly. Tolle points out that spiritual masters across millennia, diverse traditions, they've all implicitly or explicitly pointed to this truth. The now is the gateway. It's the gateway to the spiritual dimension, to true peace, to, salvation even.
And the mechanism.
The mechanism he describes is quite elegant, actually. Identification with the mind feeds it, gives it energy. But the simple act of observing your mind, of bringing conscious awareness to the thinking without getting lost in it, withdraws that energy.
And where does that energy go? It transmutes into presence. Presence is your direct access point to the timeless, the formless dimension of being.
Okay, so presence is absolutely key. How do we cultivate this presence? The book offers practical approaches, these portals, right?
Yes, it suggests several ways to anchor yourself in the now and access this presence. Some key ones include, first, the inner body. While your physical body is temporary form, it's described as the only point of access in this dimension to your true, formless, immortal reality within.
Interesting.
Feeling the aliveness, the subtle energy field within your physical structure, is a way to feel your formless being. Tolle even suggests you can use this to enhance creative thinking by kind of oscillating between active thought and simply resting attention in the stillness of the inner body.
Okay. What else?
Second, cessation of thinking, creating conscious gaps in the stream of thinking. This can be as simple as taking a single mindful breath and focusing only on that sensation. Or looking intently at something simple, like a flower or a tree, without adding any mental labels or commentary.
Right, no narration.
Exactly. Meditation is a powerful practice here, as intense presence naturally quiets the conceptual mind anyway. And third, space and silence. Becoming aware of the seemingly empty space around objects, or the silence in between sounds. Tolle suggests that by becoming conscious of external space and silence, you simultaneously become aware of the inner space of no mind, of pure consciousness, the unmanifested source.
And this isn't about just doing these things once in a while. The book really stresses this is a continuous practice, isn't it? A way of living.
Absolutely. Tolle encourages keeping some portion of your attention anchored in your inner space, feeling the inner body, even while you're engaged in daily activities. It's about keeping that portal open, this state of deep peace and aliveness, of being consciously connected to the unmanifested source through the manifested world being this bridge. That's what the book equates with the state of enlightenment.
Moving into how this actually transforms our everyday lives, the book talks a lot about surrender. Now, for a lot of people, that word sounds very passive, almost like giving up. Doesn't surrender mean you stop trying to improve your life or achieve anything?
Yeah, that's a really common misconception, and the book addresses it directly. It explicitly states that surrender is perfectly compatible with taking action, setting goals, striving for positive change.
Okay.
The difference is the energy you bring to it. Surrender means bringing an energy infused with being, reconnecting with the source energy to your doing. He calls this surrendered action and describes it not as a chore, but as a joyful celebration of life energy expressing itself.
So it's more about the quality of your effort, the state of consciousness you're acting from,
Yeah.
rather than just the absence of effort.
Precisely. Tolle argues that surrendering to the reality of the now is actually the most important thing you can do to facilitate positive change. Because any action taken from an unsurrendered state, a state of resistance, fear, anxiety, will ultimately be ineffective or just create new problems down the line. When you align with the present moment, you rise above the suffering created by resistance, and quite often the external circumstances that seemed problematic, they start to shift or lose their power over you.
What about those moments when intense negativity or suffering feels totally overwhelming? When the pain body really flares up?
The book is very clear. Don't run from it. When intense pain or strong negative emotions arise, the instruction is to face and feel the sensation fully. But here's the crucial distinction. Don't think about it. Don't get lost in the story the mind wants to tell about it. Don't create a victim identity around it. Don't blame others.
Okay, so feel, don't think.
Yes. Give your full conscious attention to the feeling itself, the pure sensation in your body, separate from the thoughts or external circumstances you might blame for it. This is how you bring the light of your consciousness, your presence, directly into that darkness, allowing it to transmute the pain.
And what about truly difficult, maybe catastrophic external situations, like serious illness, loss, disaster?
The book refers to these as limit situations, circumstances where the mind just sees no way out.
Right.
In these moments, Tolle says, there is always a way through, and that way is surrender. These can be incredibly painful, yes, but they are also often the most powerful opportunities for spiritual awakening. It's like an alchemical process where the intense pressure transmutes the pain into spiritual realization, into gold. Surrender in these moments makes space for grace to enter.
That idea feels particularly relevant to, well, the whole human experience. How does this apply to our relationships? That's often where the rubber meets the road, right?
Definitely. This is another challenging but really profound area the book gets into. It states pretty bluntly that relationships are not here primarily to make you happy or fulfilled. They're here to make you conscious.
Ooh.
If you can truly accept this, Relationships become this powerful vehicle for spiritual growth, offering a path to salvation, in a sense. The inevitable challenges and conflicts aren't failures, they're opportunities. They're precisely the moments designed to shake you out of unconscious patterns and force you back into presence.
Mm-hmm.
The book also points out that if you cannot accept the present moment, you fundamentally cannot accept others as they are. You'll always be trying to change them, judging them based on your mind's projections.
But through presence and surrender, that changes.
Through presence and surrender, you start to see beyond the other person's form, their personality, actions, flaws, and you connect with their true reality, their pure being, which is fundamentally one with your own being. At that deep level, suffering caused by relational conflict is recognized as an illusion. It stems from identification with the other person's form or your reaction to it.
So what's the ultimate felt sense of living this way, rooted in the now?
The book describes this as the joy of being, when the compulsive, ego-driven striving away from the reality of the now ceases. A sense of natural joy, aliveness, and peace flows into everything you do.
Not caused by anything external.
Exactly. It's not caused by external circumstances, it's uncaused. It's recognized as your natural state, just obscured by the mind's noise. Tolle suggests frequently asking yourself, is there joy, ease, and lightness in what I am doing? If the answer is no, it's a signal that psychological time has taken over, covering up the natural joy of the now. He shares anecdotes like the Buddhist monk who distilled 20 years of practice into realizing all that arises passes away. This I know, finding peace in accepting impermanence.
Right.
Or the story of the duck shaking off conflict, returning immediately to peace as an analogy for releasing negativity. Or the butcher who found enlightenment by realizing every piece of meat I have is the best, because when you fully accept what is, every moment holds the perfection of the now.
So pulling it all together then, Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now is this really powerful invitation, isn't it? To disengage from the endless loop of past regret and future anxiety, and instead step fully into the aliveness, the reality, and the power that only exists right here, in this very moment.
Yeah, it's a guide to observing your mind without becoming enslaved by it. Finding presence through simple anchors like the inner body, accepting what is in any given moment without resistance, and uncovering the profound freedom, uncaused peace, and innate joy that are already fundamental aspects of who you are, regardless of your external circumstances or your life situation.
It feels like the book isn't just presenting this as a personal self-help technique either, but something with maybe broader implications.
Yes, Tolle does suggest that humanity is facing a critical evolutionary juncture, an unprecedented pressure that necessitates a rapid, almost quantum leap in consciousness. This shift, this widespread embrace of the power of now, is presented not just as a path to individual peace, but perhaps as our collective best chance for survival as a species on this planet.
That's a powerful and, yeah, sobering thought to end on. Building on that idea of both an outer and inner purpose to life, maybe consider this. If your life journey has both an outer purpose, the goals, the destination you're moving towards, and an inner purpose, the deepening of your being and consciousness right now, what does it mean for your very next step to fully honor and embrace that inner journey? Something to mull over in the moments ahead.